Speaking of new views and new images, one of the things that we also had a discussion in the field about, which I felt was really refreshing. In my work with a lot of friends who are well-known landscape photographers and opportunities to photograph with them at workshops and other events, sometimes I come away with the fact that these guys are what you might call seat in the frame perfectionists, meaning, I'm going to work with it the way I am. I'm not going to adjust color. I'm not going to adjust saturation. If there's, a branch in the way, it's going to stay there. If there's a car in the picture, like, we had cars in the picture with that shooting through the trees part, I'm not going to remove them. In my discussion with you, you didn't seem to have so much that perfectionist, I'm going to leave it as it is vision. You were a little more open to making modifications.
I think I learned my skills at composition mostly from using a 4x5, and so I do have a lot of discipline in composing a photograph and positioning how things work around the edges, what's behind what, and how things line up. So I think I have a strong discipline in that sense of getting it composed well up front. So I'm not thinking about how I can manipulate things later on. So having grown up with that 4x5, film was expensive, so you couldn't take very many shots, and so it had to be right. That discipline taught me how I wanted things to be arranged in the frame. As far as what would happen later, how you would print things have evolved tremendously, because when I was photographing with the 4x5, I used slide film, and that was fairly contrasty. It didn't give you a lot of details in the shadows, and if I made my print on Cibachrome at the time, that was
even more
another problem. So it kind of pushed me towards photographing a lot in soft light, which was much more detailed and nuanced type of image to print on Cibachrome. Now it's evolved to where you can take multiple exposures and blend images different ways and balance shadows and highlights, and it's you have to be able to see what kind of materials you're shooting with. So if I'm photographing in soft light with a 4x5 and I know I'm going to print on Cibachrome, that I have to think about all the way through.
It's part of the whole process of getting to the...
As Ansel called it, pre-visualization. And so seeing what the end product might be helps you make decisions in the field.
Well, it was also interesting because I noticed when we were shooting, all of a sudden I heard, and I go, my God, he's bracketing. and it was like, oh yeah, now I tend not to be an HDR fan per se. I mean, there are some photographers out there, that's all they do is HDR, and that's part of their style, and that's fine if they're happy with it. I look at all these different things that we have, HDR, for example, and conversion to black and white, and some of these different things as part of the instruments to get to that final shot. And sometimes you have to HDR. Sometimes we're dealing with such bright skies and such dark foregrounds as we were in some of these situations that maybe blending is the only way it's going to work. But I was refreshed to see that you were actually taking that into consideration, and that as I think your vision and all the parts that go in together are pure, you use the tools to get to that, and you weren't afraid to say, I know I can bring these images together and blend some of the exposures together to actually accomplish what I really wanted to show without really overdoing it.
Well, to me, the bracketing is a matter of capturing data. So if you have a wide contrast range, you can handle a lot of difficult situations with the bracketing, whatever tool, HDR software, blending, or whatever you're using. So, when you've been in a situation where you missed the boat and you missed catching the highlight right, or you blocked up a shadow, it teaches you to maybe shoot a little insurance. And things change so fast that I have images where I bracketed, where I really couldn't do anything with them because of the state of development of HDR software, where I could go back with the latest, greatest plugin and make something much better than I could have when I actually had made the exposures.
Well,
So you're allowing for some evolution there.
Sure.
And another thing, that it depends on the camera. Because in the early days of digital cameras, I started with a Canon 1DS, and if you had to open up the shadows, you got lots of noise. And cameras are evolving so quickly that I don't know how much HDR will have to be done. Where you can pull detail out of a shadow that the camera version before you just couldn't do it. So each version seems to get to a higher level where you can make those creative decisions in terms of highlights and shadows, contrast, range.
Well, watching us shoot yesterday, I kept saying, okay, Bill's going to dip into his bag and bring out, a gradated neutral density filter. Or, okay, we're going to slide on a polarizer now. I was amazed at, and I don't mean this as an insult, but the simplicity of your approach to taking the picture without trying to complicate and overcomplicate, dropping a filter in, trying to compensate for exposure. I need a polarizer to bring those clouds or that sky in a darker blue. You didn't use any of those. Do you ever pull tools like that out of your bag?
Very, very rarely. Really? I have neutral density filters, split neutral density filters that I bought and used for a few years and stopped using. So I rarely use a filter. Polarizing filter would be what I might use where vegetation is shiny, somehow to cut through to get a stronger color saturation, that sort of thing, or to take the reflection off of water. A lot of situations I see with a polarizer where you might have shiny, glinty light on leaves, for example. You put a polarizer on, you kill that shininess. You kill the sense of light sometimes. So it can be an advantage.
So sometimes, and even Outdoor Photographer magazine, I think it's good that it exposes us to this. But sometimes you get the impression that the only way to accomplish this is with gradated filter. And if you're going to be shooting in this direction with the kind of water or the kind of sky, you better put a polarizer on. Frankly, I don't use any of these tools. I mean, once again, they're in the bag. Part of it is maybe I'm just lazy sometimes, but also most of it is I know I can do a lot of the recovery later on in my post-processing work.
And that's a personal preference. If people want to use, this filter or that, that's fine. If it works for them. What I often see in student work is that I can tell when they used one. If I can see that the tree is lighter at the bottom and darker at the top because somebody put a graduated filter down, that's not something you should be aware of when you look at a photograph. So if it's apparent, that if the tool is apparent, the technique is apparent, and takes away from really seeing the subject, then I'm going to pass on it.
Yeah, understandable. All right.
And a lot of people work different ways because I need to keep it simple. Like you were saying, I don't get too fancy.
Your approach.
I'm a straight shooter.
Straight shooter, actually, and I was expecting, that you would be doing things a lot differently, but no, your approach is straight, and it's easy, and without all this complication, you're actually freeing your mind up to start seeing other things in the landscape, and that's what you showed me yesterday, and as our viewers will see with some of the stuff of us in the field.
With the amount most people photograph, the skill set that's developed, if you photograph, 2 weekends a month, it's hard to process all the technique you're trying to incorporate. If you're photographing every day or close to that, you get to, your tools and they disappear. They're not part of the connection with the subject.
Okay.
So for me, if I have too much to worry about, it overwhelms my creative process. So there's a delicate balance. You want good technique.
Good.
You want things to be exposed properly, and all those things are good. But beyond those basics, if you overwhelm yourself with this filter and that trick, you're involved with the trick. You're not involved with the subject.
It's interesting you call it a trick. One of the things that everybody always wants to hear about is equipment. And I don't want to concentrate too much on it, but what are you doing? You went from 4x5 to digital, or actually, you tell me kind of what your transition is to what you're working with today.
Well, I started out with 35 millimeter and Pentax Spotmatic a long time ago.
God, really? The screw-on lens?
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't even paying that now. That was great.
Yep, that was my first camera in college. And then in the early 80s, I started using a 4x5. So a large body of my work is from 4x5. And I was working with Canon as part of their Explorers of Light, and I had film cameras for a while, and then they were coming out with some interesting digital cameras and in the early 2000s. And I got a loaner from them and tried it out and got excited about it. And then the next model was a step better, and just was something I was always attached to, using a 35 millimeter camera. I like doing macro. I like using telephoto to compress space and isolate areas, and it just fell right into using the Canon digital cameras back starting about 2005.
And you're using which version of the Canon camera now?
Now I still use the 1DS Mark III, which I've had since it came out, and also using the 5D Mark III.
And your normal lens is one of the things I was amazed about is that I figured, oh, God, William's going to be, he's this Canon Explorer Light guy. He's probably got like a whole bunch of, glass and a lot of white stuff, white glass. You really don't. So your lenses are?
No, my main lens is the 70-200. I use the 2.8. I used it a lot in India where I needed a faster lens, so that's why I have a faster lens, but I don't really need it for landscapes, but that's what I use. I did a search on Lightroom where you have your library and you select the lens and see how many. There was probably 90% of my shots were taken with the 70-200.
And what other lenses do you own?
I use the 24-105. I have a 16-35. But one of the lenses I really like and use a lot is the 90 millimeter tilt shift. And it actually focuses very close, so it makes a good macro lens. The tilts come in handy in lots of different ways. Sometimes doing stitch images, you just use the shift. There are situations where I'm photographing flowers or ripples, something where the subject's moving away from you, where the tilt comes in very handy.
So you have nothing really longer than 200?
I have a 300, but I rarely use it.
Rarely?
Yeah.
So so you basically only have 4 or 5 lenses and basically one body.
Well, I have 7 lenses. I have a macro. I use that.
Okay.
I have the 24 millimeter tilt shift, which I rarely use. So there's several lenses. About half my lenses just barely get touched. I like to have them handy. I don't like to go to a place and think about what lens I have to use because that narrows my thinking. Well, I brought my wide angle, so that's what I have to use.
I see. So now all that's in your camera pack that we've been carrying around?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we'll take a peek in that later on. For 4 days now, I've watched you haul this thing around. For the first time, I picked it up, and I'm like, oh my God. This thing's got to weigh 30 pounds.
Yeah, 30, 35.
So you're using a low pro backpack roller with wheels and a luggage pullout and
good mountaineering straps. If I'm going very far, there's a belt that pops out. So it supports that weight quite well, considering that it's a multifunctional bag. It's not a mountaineering pack, but it's versatile.
Well, I want to, what is in your bag? That is, I have a girlfriend who has a purse that has to weigh 20 pounds, and I wonder what is so important that you have to haul this thing everywhere you go. Now, I have a little satchel I carry on my shoulder, and a tripod, and a couple lenses and a little necessary stuff. But what do you have in here? What's your arsenal? Give us a peek.
I'm carrying my one camera body, 5D Mark III, My main lens is the 70-200, so that's what I have on. I have 2 zooms, 24-105 and 16-35. And then I carry 2 tilt shift lenses. The one I use the most is the one I was using,
The 90?
with the glacial polish, which is the 90mm.
And what's the other one, a 24?
I also have the 24 there.
Yep.
On this side I have a 300, which I don't use often, but
It's an f4, so it's not one of the big white glasses.
It's not a super heavy lens, but it's a good lens.
Yeah, you got gloves, and sometimes we ignore the small stuff, but the fact is you got good operating camera gloves. I guess these are nice skin-tight gloves with the touch tips.
I used them on the Antarctic trip. They came in real handy.
Your Hoodman
There's a
viewer.
lot of pockets here for odds and ends. I have 2 extension tubes for close-up photography. I have a macro lens.
55,
And that's my Canon 2X doubler. And then under there is my macro, 50mm macro.
So, you don't have a backup body. What happens if something happened here?
If I'm going far enough from the vehicle, I will rearrange things and carry an extra body.
So you have an extra in the vehicle close by, if we need it, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, well that's a pretty cool looking pack. It does weigh a lot.
It does. It kind of limits your range, but like I said, if I'm working very far from the road, I'll either lighten the load and carry less in the pack. I might stuff jackets or lunch or something inside.
As you've seen with what I've been shooting, I normally pull the tripod, throw the camera over my shoulder, and then I have a satchel, shoulder satchel with the wide angle and 24-70. So normally I pull out 70-200, and I carry the other 2 lenses over my shoulder in a little satchel with spare batteries, polarizers, and so forth. And it actually lightens the load. With my poor back right now, I've got to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And a lot of people don't want to or need to carry so much gear. I just like to have all the tools in one place, and while I can still carry it, I will. And
well, when you
scale
can't,
down when I have to.
When you have a hard time carrying it, you got to start looking at this mirrorless option, because when Michael showed this to me the other day with everything in the pack, and it only weighed 12 pounds, and it was equivalent to what we were carrying with our big gear here, it makes you start rethinking everything. So.
Right. Well, the things are moving that way, and I'm looking forward to being able to do that.
You know, if you go to Luminous Landscape, you got a lot of information about that.
I will look into it. I've seen what's up, and I'll look forward to what's next.
Anyway, pretty slick. And your tripod is a Gitzo?
Gitzo.
And
I have a vintage Arca
Swiss. It is a vintage. It looks like it's taken a beating.
About 25, 30 years old, and it works well. And
you don't have any problem with the screw on?
I've never dropped a camera off of there.
I did it twice, and after that the clamping thing went on.
I've had students with the fanciest, latest everything, and have them lose it. So, you know, if it's either locked in or it's not.
It doesn't feel like it's a very heavy head, but it certainly looks nice.
No, it's solid.
And they're the ones that made the whole thing. So pretty nice.
When I originally started using it, I was using 4x5, and it was just strong enough to use the 4x5. And my 4x5 was metal, folding Vista camera, and it wasn't as light as a wood camera, but it was a good combination. It worked. Not too heavy, but solid enough to do the job.
Excellent. Well, let's go back out, and the light's changing very rapidly here, and finish off our evening. If you can find us a cloud,
we'll find find some low-angled sun and probably photograph some more rocks.
Okay.